On one of his most recent records, Shlomo Carlebach sings to his own melody words from the Psalms, Borchi nafshi et Hashem, bless the Lord, O my soul. The words addressed by the psalmist to himself, to his own soul. In our day, Shlomo Carlebach has, with unique gifts and a special sweetness, taught us how Jewish teachings and Jewish tradition can speak to our souls and can enable our souls to sing in praise. Tonight, a rare dialogue with Shlomo on the odyssey of his own special soul.
Hello everyone, I'm Robert Cohen, and our series this year made possible by a grant from Pepsi Cola Company. You know, I feel it's superfluous in a sense to introduce my honored guest tonight because, you know, everybody knows Shlomo Carlebach, right? Or at least they know of Shlomo Carlebach. I find myself, I talk to people about this show, about my work or my own searching, whatever. So even if they know absolutely nothing about Yiddishkeit, about Judaism, and they don't know, you know, teachers, they don't know books, that's just the place where they're at. But Shlomo Carlebach they've heard of, or they heard him sing once, and more often than not, it reached them, the singing reached them too. At the same time, I think most of us know Shlomo through his music, through his songs, which we'll continue to share tonight as well. And through his teachings, if they have been to classes with Shlomo, as I've been privileged to over the last few years. Tonight, though, I want to perhaps get to know Shlomo a little bit on a different level, which is inside Shlomo Carlebach, the teacher, the source of the melodies, and the Jew, the individual Jew who has very much gone through his own journey and his own struggling, and certainly, from all appearances, has charted very much his own path, a very unique path. So this is the level in which I hope we'll be able to talk tonight, Shlomo. You know, I want to begin asking you almost something very basic. You know, sometimes you think you know somebody, it turns out you don't know them. This is true on one level. On a deep level, you don't know some of their attitudes and philosophy. Maybe I'll find that out, you know, as we talk. But sometimes you don't even know basic data. You know, I'm embarrassed to say, I probably shouldn't tell you, that until a few days ago, I don't think I knew. I'm not sure I remember it right or not, but I don't think I knew that you were born in Germany. Do you know that?
Yes.
Isn't that which is really remarkable, and most people would tell from your speech. But somehow I had the impression, no. So you can see that in terms of biographical data, my encounter with you is at a very different level as one of my, and I should say as one of my most important teachers. But maybe we should get to a little of the tachlis data, but I want to ask you to look at it in a certain light. Give us a little bit of a sense of your own background, your own childhood, of in fact where you grew up and of some of the initial places. But I'd like to ask you also to reflect on how much of that past, what of your childhood, of your family, is part of you now. How much are you recognizably that person? How much of that is with you?
I think that I took everything with me. I don't think I left anything behind me.
Uh-huh.
Let me start just from the beginning in a nutshell. I was born in Germany, and maybe you know that Carlebach is one of the most outstanding rabbinical families in Germany.
Very long family, goes way back.
Going all the way back
Yes.
to Otto Marisch and to Adam. Do you know that we are descendants of King David from about 18 branches? Unbelievable. Like my father traced it back, we are absolutely related to all the greatest rabbis in the last few centuries.
Uh-huh.
And I have a twin brother, who's very
Yes.
precious to me. His name is Rabbi Eli Carlebach in Staten Island. And he's just working now on giving out an unbelievable, from infinite scope, Chassidic anthology from all the rabbis, what they said about everything.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, I grew up in Berlin, then we moved to Vienna.
When, by the way? That's another thing I don't know.
I was born 1930.
Okay.
And we came to Vienna, and the special thing about my father's house was always open, absolutely open, like house of Abraham, my father, people were coming.
Open to
going.
people, yeah.
And poor people were coming all the time. But the most beautiful thing was that all the great rabbis always came to my father's house.
Uh-huh.
And every which I think is very important, every little boy, every little girl needs a little hero on the side, besides parents. The question is, who is that hero?
Besides parents, yeah.
And I had the privilege of having some great rabbis being my big heroes, but you can have a big hero and he doesn't know you. But imagine if you have a hero who knows you also,
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of those great rabbis being in my house, and I hooked up to them,
I should tell you, I say this really with all humility, I've been very lucky doing this work, that I've been able to get to know more closely and personally some of my most important teachers, so that we know each other and we talk and we talk on the phone and I learn from you and whatever and so I connect very much with what you're saying, because I've had that, been fortunate to have a little bit of that relationship with a few teachers. But I'm curious, you say, so you had some heroes in the sense of models. What do you think it is about them, or about some of them, that you found most important, that got to you most?
Yeah, I'll tell you something very, very deep, Like a child needs a hero, let's say while I'm dreaming when I'm little, how do I want to be when I'll be big,
Yeah, sure.
So you need something, So I had the privilege of seeing those great rabbis who I was hoping myself I'd be maybe like them, a little bit like them.
Yeah.
But the specialty was that those great rabbis, they not only they showed me who they are, they also, without saying anything, making myself too big, but they really loved me so much that they always told me, what I could do when I'll be big, And they gave me so much courage and strength, like I had I don't know, so telling you stories. One of the greatest geniuses before the war, absolutely unsurpassed, was Ramotcha Pogomansky. Great genius. And the Kovnarov, who was one of the greatest rabbis, said that he would have been in the time of the Beis Yosef, the time of the composer of Shulchan Aruch, he would have been, even in that time, one of the greatest geniuses in the world. And, before the Second World War, if any Jew in Poland or Russia, not Russia was already cut off, Poland or Lithuania was sick, they would come to Vienna. So he was sick, and he stayed in my house, and then he rented a room next to us. He had to be in Vienna for half a year for treatments. And I had the privilege to taking walks with him every day. And, like he was maybe one of my deepest friends in my lifetime, And so I had a tremendous childhood,
I relate very much, again, to what you say about the importance of some of these people as teachers for you. They made you aware of your own powers, of your own abilities. They kind of encourage you to feel your own strength. And thinking on another level as well, in terms of how you perceive them, was there something about them as persons, in terms of how they related to people, as well as to you, that was important? As well as, say, their learning, which I guess would be obvious.
I tell you what, I would lie now if I would tell you that I remember that. I don't,
Yeah.
But what I remember my whole lifetime is that they were always telling me what they expect of me, when I'll be older. So this was very important to me. And then when I came to America, my two big heroes in learning, after that was Reb Shlomo Carlebach, was really my greatest teacher in depth, he was so deep, whenever he said something to me, Mamish had felt inside of me like somebody just suddenly turned on the sun, imagine it's dark night and somebody turns on the sun, so much light. I was like so much light coming into my head. And then in learning was also Rab Aaron Kotler in Lakewood. Was unbelievable, this sharpness and the vastness of his scope of his learning. See, Reb Shlomo Carlebach was deep, and Rab Aaron was sharp, deep. Okay, so I had those two unbelievable teachers. And this was on a learning level, but then on a spiritual level, since we were little kids, we had met Lubavitch Rebbe in Vienna. And this was so special and so beautiful, the old Lubavitch Rebbe, so holy, and we really felt connected to his soul, and also he let us know that his soul is connected to ours,
Let me ask you about Lubavitch. You mentioned a certain sweetness in the relationship. How did it then develop? Because you actually worked closely with Lubavitch Rebbe for a few years, no?
Yeah, with the present Lubavitch Rebbe, with the present Lubavitch, I was so close. He's still the Holy of Holies and very strong. But you see, at a certain point, the Rebbe called me and he says, I think you have talents to talk to people. I want you to go out in the world and talk to young people.
Yeah.
And I did this for him for 4 years, It was unbelievable.
I think he was right about the talent. But
I don't know. But
so
then
the problem?
One of the major things which made me a little bit drift away from Lubavitch, I don't remember exactly how it happened. I walked into the Rebbe one time and I said to him that, let's assume I'm coming to a college and I have 100 kids, 100, let's hope, 100 people come to hear me.
Yeah.
So I say boys on one side, girls on the other side. I lost 90. Then I say girls don't sing. There are 10 left, right? Out of the 10, I lost 9.
You just lost 9 of them.
So then I'm sitting with one schlepper and not the greatest. And that, it's like if someone has a heart attack, you don't look at their toenails, right? Let's assume it is very important that boys and girls should not sit together. Let's assume it's very, very important girls shouldn't sing, right? Let's assume.
In other words, okay, Lubavitch does assume these things, and they're part of
let's
one
assume it for 1
way.
second. Let's assume it.
Okay.
But it's more, 2 million miles more important that I should reach a student, tell them what it is to be a Jew, the first thing, right? So the Rebbe says to me, I cannot tell you to do it, I cannot tell you not to do it. If you want to do it on your own. So slowly, I drifted away. Also something else really, which turned my heart over, was very strong. I had a girl in one of my classes. At that time was strictly Lubavitch. I was crazy. I would never go on a subway without at least getting 5 people's names and numbers and turn them onto Lubavitch. That's how much I go out.
I can imagine.
I was very strong.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was learning strictly Mamon from the Rebbe and Lubavitch and everything. There was one girl, I knew she was really in bad shape when I met her. And Baruch Hashem, I had the privilege of bringing her a little bit back to Yiddishkeit.
Yeah.
And after coming to my learning for half a year, one time she came up and she says, Mamash, I'm so thankful to you that you brought me back to Yiddishkeit. And she wanted to give me a big hug, without meaning anything bad.
Yes.
I shrieked away like atomic explosion. And you know what happened? The saddest thing is, I never seen her since.
Uh-huh.
And I was sick over myself. I was just crazy. Where's my head? Where's my sensitivity? This girl didn't mean anything bad. And I mean, it's crazy, I realized I better check on if I want to have to do with young people, I have to know what, where, when, And something else, let's say later on, I realized one thing. You cannot just come to young people and tell them, I want to show you the way to Yiddishkeit. Today, young people are so hungry. They're hungry for a father, for a mother, and for a friend, for a brother, for a sister.
Mm-hmm.
They are so lonely, most people today. Very few people in their life reach their hearts and their souls. They're just lonely, So if I can meet any boy and girl and adopt them at that moment to be my closest, dearest, sweetest friends, my brothers and my sisters, that's the best I can do. So anyway, at this point, I do it completely different. Every person I meet, I assume that they know them since Mount Sinai. Every person I assume, and I know they're my brother, my sister. And sometimes when I meet children, young people who mamish need a father, I adopt them as my son and my daughter. And sometimes I just tell them right away on the spot, I'm adopting you. And they say, yeah, we want you to adopt me.
So you're talking a lot about what you sensed young people needed and wanted. And I'm thinking that the 60s was a period in terms of the counterculture, so to speak, and communes and hippie culture and whatever, in which one sensed that you had kind of intense relationship to that period. You were you seemed to, there was a sense in which you were like more at home.
You mean I'm one of the leftover holy hippies from the 60s? Yeah, could be.
Well, it may be a way of putting it. But I think there was a sense that your style, as well as something of the message, this is more complicated, was responding to the sensibility of where people were at. And I'm curious how, at this point in retrospect, how you look at that whole period.
I was always under the impression that the hippies of the 60s were the truest followers of the Baal Shem. The deepest followers. And I don't even know if all the Chassidim were on that level, Maybe they didn't know so much about Yiddishkeit on a word level, but on a soul level, they really, really mamish loved the world.
I think that they picked up God. That you felt that way. They responded to that. I think that's why there was a sense of closeness.
I don't know, but you know what kind of Friday nights we had in the House of Love and Prayer, I'll tell you a weird thing. At one time, I took a plane, Paris, London, San Francisco. There's a non-stop London, San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very small plane, so you sit tight. It's about, I think about 17 hours flight, or maybe 15 hours. I arrived in San Francisco Friday afternoon, and the craziest thing happened. The plane was delayed. I couldn't even drive back to the house anymore. Like half the way we were driving, then it was Lichtbench. We had to walk for an hour and a half.
It was Friday night now, Shabbos,
Friday night, yeah. I'm coming, from such a long flight and walking an hour and a half. I came into the house, and I was really exhausted. And kids came in to daven, hundreds of kids in those days. It was so full that sometimes people had to get through the window to get into the house. So anyway, I said to Arya, my right-hand man at that time, I said, something, you really have to forgive me. I think tonight I'm knocking off the davening. I just don't have strength. They began davening about 8 o'clock. And, in those days I would translate every word. And from L'Chodaydi on, from Izmir David on, and it was just stories and singing and all kinds of things. Finally, we come to Shalom Aleichem. I asked Arya, what time is it? He says 20 after 4.
20 after 4 in the morning?
20 after 4 in the morning.
And Shalom Aleichem now, it would be like before you were going to sit down to eat, right?
Yeah.
Would be the traditional
usually in those days,
song.
our davening lasted all night. I don't ever remember going to sleep Friday night in the house of prayer before between 5 and 7.
I believe it.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And
in the spirit in which you said things were then, by the way, I'm going to continue translating every word, so I should just mention that for those who don't know, the House of Love and Prayer was, how do we describe it, kind of a communal Jewish place that was a center for community and also specifically for Shabbos davening and Shabbos getting together, learning meals. And this was in San Francisco, especially.
Lasted 10 years, from 66 till 76.
Good, that's in place. Just, again, so we don't leave anybody behind, in case when Shlomo refers to davening, people should know that we're talking about praying, about Jewish praying.
You see, let me tell you in a nutshell, because he asked me about my spiritual wanderings.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I was always, I'm sure you're the same way, maybe everyone is the same way, I'm sure. I always want the utmost. You know. We are living in a world where growing up means to compromise, you know, wanting less.
Maybe it always does.
That's what people think
Yeah.
growing up means, right?
Yeah.
For me, growing up means to want more and more and more and more, to have the strength to compromise less. Okay,
It's a nice thought.
Okay, here I'm learning yeshiva all my life, 24 hours a day, right? And while I was in yeshiva, I was really divorced from the world. You know, I mean, I knew there was a world. I didn't know what's going on. I'm coming out into the world, and suddenly I see that 80% of our Jewish kids don't know anything about Yiddishkeit. Not only don't know anything about Yiddishkeit, anything reaches them more than Yiddishkeit. Anything else in the world. And I realized if, you know, after the 6 million, every Jew was always precious. But now it's even 6 million times more, right? And here I was a rabbi in a synagogue for half a year. And to tell you the truth, I hadn't learned yet how to reach them.
That wasn't your vocation exactly, maybe.
No, but maybe now I would know how to do it. At that time, I know I didn't talk to them Shabbos about the portion of the week in a way that they should find themselves in that portion of the week.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't learn it in the yeshiva, you know. So I realized that I have to relearn on my own. And you see what it is, why I'm so close to the hippies, because I began learning from them.
What?
I made them into my rabbis.
And what did you learn?
And I didn't learn words from them, but somehow I opened my heart and let their light shine into my neshama. And between my words and their light, somehow we put it together a little bit.
And I would add another ingredient, which is your music. When did the music really become so much a part, such an absolutely integral part? You can't think of Shlomo Carlebach without singing, without your own songs. When did that become a part of your outreach?
This is actually one of the greatest miracles in the world. In the year 1958, I was in the village at a party, and there I saw somebody playing a guitar exactly 2 chords. Can you imagine? But you know, with 2 chords...
whatever they did with...
Everything 2 chords. Yeah. Minor or major. He only knew 2 chords on the guitar. And I realized with 2 chords, you can accompany yourself to every melody in the world. So I bought myself a guitar, and maybe you know Anita Shir, she's one of the greatest flamenco players in the world, a Jewish girl.
Uh-huh.
She lives in the village still. And
part of the story, I don't know.
Somebody told me about her. I called her up and I told her, I don't want to know music, I just want to know chords, you know. And one time or other, I played a melody for her. She says, oh, that's very beautiful. What's that? I says, I just made it up. She said, oh, you know, that's really beautiful.
Was that the first point at which you were aware that you could compose melodies?
Yeah, I mean, I knew, I thought to myself, I'm singing a little bit, but it's nothing to talk about. You know, that song I was singing to her was, oh, you shama, still, the world is still singing it, you know?
Yeah.
She
We
said,
certainly are.
That's an unbelievable song, you know?
Wow.
And then I called her up a day
quite
later.
A beginning.
I called her up a day later, you know, I was in the Lancet Street in the subway, and I said, you know, it sounds crazy. Just made up a little melody, you know? It was S-O-A-9, you know?
Really?
And she wrote it down for me on notes, you know?
Oh,
song,
some of the classics came from the very beginning.
Yeah. And then I realized also one thing, that whatever people don't want to hear, But if you tell them in between one song and the other, they're ready to hear it. Because their heart is more open. Because you see, most people feel guilty about being Jewish, right? Everything. And if you just tell it to them, they turn off. I don't want to feel more guilty. But if you tell them in between songs, when the heart is open, then they know, I don't want you to feel guilty. I just want you to be a little bit better, you know?
That's nice, although I would just add, if I may, Shlomo, that I'm not sure it has to even be looked at so pessimistically, that there's a sense in which the music, well, as you say, opens up a different dimension that can't be reached by words, and also that it meets another need, which is a need for warmth. How can you even put it into words? If you could put it into words, we wouldn't need music. So that in a sense, when you both sing and teach, so you're simply reaching people on more levels, nourishing people on more levels than you could just by teaching. I'm not even sure that it's a function, in other words, of being alienated from Judaism. When I'm not feeling alienated, I still am lifted up by song.
Yes.
Speaking of which, let's take a brief and appropriate musical break to hear some of Shlomo's songs, and we'll be back.
From one of his earliest records, Shlomo singing words from the Psalms, I lifted up my eyes to the mountains. Whence will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth.